Egypt's decision to increase the prices of basic goods in subsidized outlets across the country has been met with anger and frustration. Starting this Wednesday, the price of sugar and cooking oil is up by 14% and 20% respectively at government outlets. Now, let's get more on this story. Adel Mahrouky joins us in Cairo. Welcome to the show, Adel. Now, Egypt certainly has been facing a sugar shortage since September last year. So these price hikes were sort of expected. How will we see this affect the farmers and certainly the private sector players?
Well, basically, what's going on is generally what people have been complaining of for a very long time. The government is now in a phase that it is still subsidizing many goods, many of the basic goods in its supply chains, but at the same time, it is not supplying it with an enough amount that would make a big gap between the prices in its supply chains and what's going on in the market itself. So, for example, the sugar is sold at about £8. That's for a kilo. That's about $0.50, while in the market it's at £9. That's just 12 cents more, and that's has been measured in several things. So now it's still the complication that every time there's a hike that goes on, people would feel that they need more money or more wages. And the problem is the wages have been still since the flotation of the Egyptian pound, and therefore many have been complaining.
Now, we know Egyptian authorities in the past have laid the blame on sugar factories and distributors. They say they hoard and smuggle supplies of sugar in the country. Have they been able to manage that issue?
There has been a huge crackdown from the government on suppliers, on distributors, and on companies that have sugar as their main ingredient. So that goes for soft drinks, for pastry shops and candy shops, factories, and several others. The government has launched a huge crackdown just to click or stop that gap, and they have every day for the, when the crisis was at its peak, you'd see the Interior Ministry saying that it has caught tons of sugar that have been stocked out from the market so that the prices would go further up. And many have been saying that there was no need for the sugar prices in Egypt to go that way up. We're talking about more than 100% increase in the last 3 to 4 months, because basically Egypt produces 2.3 million tons of what it needs, and it uses about there's about a 700,000 tons gap between what the market supplies and what the market needs. So, and Egypt has been supplying that with its local ingredients, with sugar cane and beetroot that is produced locally. But once the dollar has been increasing outside and the gap, the filling gap, which is about less than a quarter of what the market needs, have been increasing, then the local producers as well has increased. And many believe that what the government crackdown was about is to make sure that there is distribution, but they still blame the distributors and the local producers for using what was going outside in the international market to raise their own prices.
Now, Adel, President El-Sisi also said that the government is trying to manage the current price hikes, especially in the private market. He said by creating a parallel commodity market mechanism. How so, and certainly how soon will we see this?
Well, what we see in Egypt is that we have sort of a parallel market. That goes through the subsidized supply chains that belong to the Ministry of Supply, where they have prices of basic goods that should be much less than in the outer market. In its statement, the ministry says that the products that it has in its supplies are about from 20 to 30% less in price than what they are in the open or free market. So the problem is that there's a big waste. There's a big leakage going on. Number one, we're talking about it serves 70 million Egyptians, and that's almost 3/4 of the population. So there are many who don't really need the subsidies that are benefactors, and this is how the government, what many are calling the government to filter the database so that they would have the subsidies going to those who deserve it. Now, what maybe the president is referring to is to create a new system that would only focus on those who are in the deepest need, or the poorest classes of the Egyptian society. It's not clear whether he will keep the supply chains, whether he will cancel it and open a new outlet so that they would re-register citizens to that, because filtering is a hassle, and many believe that the government, for the government to do it, it will be almost nearly impossible.
Right.
There's no time frame the president has given, but he says and stressed that the government will be the main tool in that new market.
Right. Well, many thanks, Adel, for those insights. And certainly Adel went out into the streets of Egypt to find out more about the impact of these price hikes. Take a look.
It's the third price increase by the Egyptian government in just 4 months. Consumer products like sugar have risen as much as 60% for ration card users over the period. The Ministry of Supply, on the other hand, has only increased credit for its citizens just once. Egyptians say they've never been under such pressure.
They increased our smart cards by £3. Today, these £3 won't be enough to buy plain bread. The government says they'll support people with limited income. With the inflation, we almost have no income. They've given us £3 extra and taken from us at least £30 after these price hikes.
It's good that the government is keeping the subsidies as long as we find what we need. The problem is, sometimes we don't find the subsidized goods.
The government's budget has over $15 billion deficit this year. Since Egypt depends mainly on imports, the deficit nearly doubled after flotation of the pound, forcing the government to cut spending. Analysts say that without radical changes in the subsidy system, more hikes will follow.
If similar government policies continue, it will be forced to once again increase prices. Its role now should be to filter its ration cards database and remove those who don't deserve support. These are estimated to be more than 1/3 of the benefactors.
Food subsidies burden the national budget with $13 billion annually. The current system covers nearly 70 million benefactors. That's 76% of the population. With 40% of Egyptians living under the poverty line, the government must also see leakages in the subsidy system and focus subsidies on essential goods to end the crisis among its poorest citizens. Adel Mahrouky, CGTN, Cairo.